Greetings, everybody, and welcome to today's VentureBeat webinar on how data is revolutionizing game creatives for UA, brought to you by yellowHEAD. My name is Dave Clark. I'll be your host for today's event. Now, before we get started, just a few notes to start things off. I want you to know that this will be a very interactive webinar today, which means we want to hear from you. We'll have a live audience Q&A session at the end of today's panel discussion. And if you have any questions at all, you can type them at any time under the Ask a Question tab that you'll find on your screen. We're interested in all of those questions, so get them in and we'll try to answer as many of them today as we can. Also, I want you to know that on your screen, you'll see that there's an Attachments tab, and that's the place where you can go to access various resources associated with today's webinar. We have a couple of links there for you, so when you have a chance, check those out. And also, there's a rating system on your screen. You can use that rating system under the Rate This tab to let us know what you think today. You can rate this webinar on a 5-star scale. You can send us comments and feedback. You can do that at any point and as many times as you want during the webinar. We love to see all of those comments, all of that feedback, so we encourage you to do that at any time today. And finally, if you have any technical problems today, all you have to do is refresh your screen. This is a browser-based event, so refreshing your screen will usually resolve any issues you have with your visuals or with audio. And I think that's everything you need to know for today. So let's get started with today's discussion on how data is revolutionizing game creatives for UA. And let's begin by meeting our speakers. Noah Miller is marketing creative strategist at yellowHEAD. Maria Waters is head of conversion optimization at Zynga. Oliver Wapshott is creative strategist at Snap, and Dean Takahashi is lead writer at GamesBeat. So let's start things off with Noah. Noah, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and the work you do?
Hi, everyone. My name is Noah. I'm marketing creative strategist at yellowHEAD. I lead all of the data creative work that we do with our clients, one of which is Zynga, our amazing partner. We really come up with creatives that is based on data. Something that is really different and new in the creative world and how we do creatives. And I'm excited to tell you all about it today.
Great, thanks, Noah. Let's move next to Maria. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, Maria?
Hi, Maria. I'm Maria. I'm head of conversion optimization at Zynga. I'm responsible for optimizing our funnels for our games, paid and organic, so that includes UA creative and ISO optimization.
Excellent. Thanks, Maria. Next up is Oliver. Tell us a little about yourself, Oliver.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ollie. I'm a creative strategist at Snapchat, and I'm responsible for all of our gaming clients outside of the US. So what creative strategist really means is working with you guys to figure out what our best ad products are for whatever your objectives might be. So advising in-house creative teams and working with companies like yellowHEAD, for instance, to create fit for platform creative.
Great, thanks so much. And finally, Dean. Dean, tell us about yourself and the work you do.
I'm a lead writer for GamesBeat at VentureBeat. I've been at the company 12 years. I've written about games for 24 years and tech for longer than that. I also help run our events.
We're going to have Dean serve as our moderator today. He's going to lead us through the rest of today's event. And let's get going. Dean, I'm going to hand things over to you now. Take it away.
All right, thank you, Dave. Let's start with a question to Noah. How do you view the state of the market and mobile advertising, and how have things changed in the past 10 years? Just trying to get our audience sort of level set here, I guess.
Yes, hi. Well, nowadays we have so many different ads running where we have so many different games, titles, different forms of entertainment trying to reach the players that are out there, all of them trying to grab their attention. So what we're seeing is really just like a lot of different kind of creatives trying to beat one another in order to be the one that catches, becomes that top performer, and brings those users. And we are seeing that even though, like, when it comes to the media planning, we have made so much progress in optimization, and everything is almost automatic. When it comes to creative, which has such a big importance in the success of a campaign, that has not changed at all in the past couple of years, even decades. So we're trying to take all that we've learned from the data process and the evolution and to take it in to the creative process and try to come up with better creatives that will stand out, be bold, and become those top performers that everyone is looking for, and bring those KPIs that we are aiming for.
Mm-hmm. So we've had all these changes in the industry, like Apple is retiring the identifier for advertisers and prioritizing privacy over targeted advertising. And then we have increasing automation of things outside of creative, thanks to Google and Facebook. And I wonder how that's also affecting the creative people in advertising as well.
So I think at the end of the day, what we're seeing is that all these different platforms and all these different changes that happen on each platform just has to make sure that we adapt ourselves so that we create ads for the different platforms based on the way that people take in all that content from the different places. So learning best practices, for example, on Snap, on how to be short and quick, on Facebook, when we have those 15 seconds, but those really 3 seconds at the beginning that we have to grab. So we have to learn the best practices of all of these different platforms where all of these different changes are happening, and then create creative that is fit for the platform, and not just create a creative and just send it out everywhere, and just really make it fit to the right platforms where we're talking to.
Mm-hmm. So Oliver and Maria, you're sort of in the on the ground floor of this competition, I guess, for attention. And I wonder if you had any reaction to anything Noah was mentioning here. Is she describing your world, I guess?
So certainly the word has changed. I actually think that we're doing more ads than we were doing before. There's a lot of competition. There's a lot of different trends going, and there's so many emerging markets that we have to keep testing and understanding what is working and getting to know a specific data of what is working in an ad is super important for us.
Mm-hmm. And Oliver, anything as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think Snapchat's got an interesting perspective on this sort of area of the industry. I guess more broadly from a sort of time period point of view, we're 9 years old as a company. So we're fairly new in the game. We sold our first advert 6 years ago within some content that I was publishing at the time, the Macy's Day Thanksgiving Parade. And we had to put every ad in by hand. And since then, especially in the last sort of 2 to 3 years, we've really upped our game in terms of our performance offering and started working with a sort of vastly larger number of advertisers. So for us, that's been the learning on, how to get to grips with that. But we've really benefited from some of the headway that Facebook and Google have made in terms of how they serve ads and learn from it. But put our own spin of sort of privacy first, mobile first on that offering, and been really sensitive to how that changes what works in an ad, and been really comfortable with sort of challenging those sort of legacy assumptions, I guess.
Mm-hmm. And Noah, you guys at yellowHEAD have this tool called Allison. I wonder how new that is and how important that is now for helping creative people. It's like it feels like it's a scientific sort of backbone behind the things you can create in advertising.
Yeah, exactly. It's not that new. We've been using it in-house on ourselves for quite a long time, but now we've realized that this has a lot of potential. Allison, what it really does is that it helps us to analyze the creatives that we do as we break them down into little parts, bits and pieces, and then connect it to the data of how each creative performs. It allows us to see which elements within that creative was top performers. And we're not looking at just one ad, we're looking at many ads, at 30, 50, 100 ads. So a bunch of ads together with all these different elements that we use allows us to see which element performs best. And what it really does is it helps us when we get to the part when we also concept, but also when we build the ad, and then we decide, okay, what do we want to place in the ad? Which character? What kind of animations? What kind of colors for CTA? And that really allows us to make decisions that is based on data, based on performance, past performance of successful creatives, and take it back and reuse it so that we keep on learning from the creatives and not just keep on doing things based on what we feel look good or what we learned in design school. So we, for the first time, really use data to come up with creatives. And I think that's pretty unique, and it really helps take the creative process on a different journey, both when you create new creatives and also when you want to optimize existing creatives, or even try to maximize the potential of creatives that you know that are really well, but all of a sudden are starting to show like poor performance results, and then how you bring those creatives back to life and to really get the most out of the creative work that you do. Because at the end of the day, we spend a lot of time testing, coming up with new concepts, doing creatives, and we really want to maximize all of that potential.
Mm-hmm. I'd like to remind the audience you can ask questions at any time. So if you want to start adding your questions in, we'll be able to look at those and select the ones that we want to answer. For Maria, can you describe more about what your day-to-day job is like, and like, I don't know, how big a department it is, what you're advertising, and all
that? So we have a lot of games. We have a big portfolio. So I spend a lot of the time on UA creative. Spend a lot of time with Noah. There's a lot of
So Allison is your best friend.
Yeah, well, they also do creative for us. There's a lot of things that are important. Talent is one of them, internal and external. We have an internal team, but we use a lot of vendors that helps us and have expertise in certain areas for certain games. Tech's important for us. Allison Art is something that actually was super important for us. It really changed the way that we look at things. We can still look at it in a macro level, but in a micro level, especially with a lot of titles like, for example, slots, where they all at first glance look the same. And perhaps you might say, well, winning animation with coins work. But really, when you dig in deeper into Allison, you can actually see the different parts that are drastically different from game to game. And he's super excited. I think Noah and I get super excited when we see those things and learn, but it's really, that part has really changed. As for our process, we try to keep a flexible process because there's always industry changes and we need to be able to adapt quickly. But we spend a lot of time on learning and understanding the industry, understanding the app stores, understanding what our competitors are doing, and what our channels are doing. We spend a lot of time on hypothesis and creative strategy. We have internal and external partners as well to do that, to be able to diversify the content. And then the data feedback that it's crucial for us. With Allison, where we have been able to actually make that data feedback almost instant, which really helps when we have a lot of games and a lot of creative. We're running through a lot of creative every week.
Okay, and Oliver, how about you? You want to answer the same question about, like, what's your day-to-day like, and what are you advertising, etc.?
Yeah, absolutely. So I work out of the London office. And our office here supports all of our clients outside of the US. We have local markets and local offices as well, but this is the international hub. So my team in the London office is about 15 creative strategists, and we each support a top tier of about 30 sort of key clients with whom we're in dialogue, daily, every couple of days. People like Maria, figuring out what their objectives are, what their needs are, how we can help. Obviously, every client is different. Every client's game offering is different, and the way they go about their business is different. So sort of building up that relationship and having an understanding of, I think in particular, what their creative capabilities might be as well. There are some companies who have really strong internal departments. There are others who would much prefer to outsource and get advice on who and how they might go about that. And that's where we work with Noah and yellowHEAD and a bunch of other sort of external production partners to figure those out. So yeah, we'll advise on which of our products will deliver their objectives or satisfy their objectives in the best way. And then beyond that, using their sort of creative touch points, using their game IP, how we can bring that game to life in a sort of what we call a grammar or a language that works on Snapchat. That's different, I guess, from just taking whatever video you're running somewhere else and cutting it down to 6 to 10 seconds. Really digging into how people use the app, understanding the point of view and the latest changes, how that might affect user behavior, how that might affect the environment and the context within which your ads are seen.
Mm-hmm. I think it's good to remind everybody, I guess, creativity here is the human part that is what can make a real difference these days, and like differentiating yourself from the competition who also has access to a lot of automation out there, right? And I'm interested in hearing a bit more about maybe how data is helping that creative side, right? Like what kind of data helps you make better decisions about the creative? Maybe Noah, do you want to start with that?
Sure. I think that when we break down the creatives into very specific things, for example, if I break down types of characters, or if I break down what's happening in the first 3 seconds of a scene of a video, or if I look into what elements am I showing, that really helps me understand what is the most interesting thing about my creative. What is the showstopper? So if I see that like a specific character performs really well, maybe I can come up with a concept using that character as the lead character. Or if I'm seeing, for example, we recently published a social casino report where we saw that mice and monkey are the best kind of animals to show for specifically for slots, that we show them on reels. Those are the top performing. So we can take from that, grab on from there, and see how we maybe like put them as the hero of the next video. Or running for Zynga on Harry Potter, we learned that the flowers within the game are a really interesting aspect of the game. So why not come up with an ad that is just about the flowers? And I mean, that could be really just about anything. It could be anything from like a specific color on a specific coin animation, and a specific kind of animation, even formats. If we're seeing that cinematograph or something that performs really well, so why not say, hey, the brief right now is to bring the most creative cinematographs that we can bring, because we're seeing that that's the kind of format that we have. And when you look at that, and we look at, once again, like a lot of creatives, and you see what's the top things for that creative, I think that's something that really helps come up with the beginning of creative concepts. And it's really important for me to say that at the end of the day, creative is creative. It's from the heart and soul of people. The people who come up with the concept, with the thinking, with the motivations as to what to base the creative on. But Allison and Dada really help to fine-tune things so that they're like a lot more on point, taking all those creative concepts and making them what really makes the creative perform at the end.
Mm-hmm. And Maria or Oliver, you want to chime in on that as well? How does data help creative?
Yeah, I like to look at data from a micro and macro level. I think in a high level, it's nice to understand what themes are resonating, or even like sentiment is something that it's important for us. It helps us make sure that the ad is exciting. If you're thinking of what evokes an ad, it actually really helps you keep the ad not stale, and have some kind of feeling. And that helps with the high level view. But then when we dig into to Allison, and understanding all the little parts that really help compose and what can it help, it really completes the full picture, because just understanding what themes they like, it's a little broad, and sometimes when you're trying to really nail down top performers, you need to look at, yes, maybe animals are working, but how are the animals working and what type of animal working? It's very important for us to dig in to all those details to complete the picture.
Yeah,
And all
from our point of view, I think more than anything, we're obviously we're in the business of advice and sort of consultancy. So it's really important for us when we make suggestions to then be able to back it up with some sort of data and proof that it is working, or at least to present an idea that has that sort of margin for different outcomes. So when I know we're going to talk about perhaps best practice a little bit more in depth later, but when we're speaking with clients, we're always suggesting that you come up with a number of different points of view and then find the winner, rather than saying, I think this is going to be the winner, and making loads of that thing. So we're all about sort of suggesting and encouraging flexibility and variety, not only in style, but sort of variance within each style, and making sure that you've got your finger on the pulse of what is working, refreshing elements, keeping things up to date. So yeah, data from that point of view helps us to make the right decisions and give the correct advice to people about what might work or what might not, or suggest if it's time for a change, and what that change might look like based on sort of previous performance and bits and pieces like that.
Mm-hmm. There, go to an audience question for Noah. Like, how does a yellowHEAD decide which elements Allison looks at? What's it measuring, I guess?
Okay, so we really work closely with our client, and it's really important for us to understand their KPIs. So it could be a variety of things, depending on what our clients measure their creatives on. Most of them measure on ROID 7. And then what we do is, when we look at the elements, we always try to see a couple of things. First of all, we want to make sure that whatever element is at the top is above average on the account. And we also want to make sure that it had enough spent, and not only had enough spent, but also appeared in many creatives. Sometimes we see top performers because one kind of creative skews all of the results, but we really try to make this combination of a lot of money spent on many ads, and then also seeing that it performed above average. And then also, when we decide on what elements to use in which ad, we don't say, all right, let's take all the top performers and shove it into an ad. We kind of play around with it. We want to see different combinations of different elements and how they affect one another. And we also want to make sure that, we use them wisely, and not make a bombastic Frankenstein kind of ad. So there is a lot of thought behind the whole process that is backed up by data.
You can make a 2-hour movie then, right?
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Maria, I guess, do you have like a different decision-making process between all the different titles? And like, how does Allison sort of impact the process of, what kind of decisions you're making for each game or each ad, I guess?
From a high level, I think the process is similar: learning phase, strategy phase, measuring phase. But then from there, different games have, first, they have different challenges. Like a game that is saturated, maybe you need to be more daring and maybe more flexible. Or if you have a brand, because the game is older, or if you have licensed products, perhaps you cannot go as daring as you would like. And then moreover, digging into each game, it's important, because they have different things that perform for them. You cannot take one ad and apply the rule to all the games. Even for we might have 5 slots games. It's not the same for all of them. So veering them and always understanding, like we always look high level of what's performing throughout all of them, but we always veer into each game to find what is unique about them, and actually what are the differentiators, and trying to really test those and use Allison data to really help us pull down all that knowledge that otherwise, again, it's really hard to get without.
And I guess it might be a good time to talk about yellowHEAD's recent report on data that you've analyzed about social casino game advertising. It had things in it like the 3-second rule, and what color to use on a button people are using to purchase something, right? I wonder what learnings come out of that, and maybe what kind of rules as well. Noah?
Yeah, so the 3-second rule, by the way, it's across the board, not just for social casino. And I think even on Snap, on Facebook, on different platforms, we understand that the attention span is so short, we have to make it count like right at the beginning of an ad. And therefore, we also
and that's how long you have to grab somebody's attention.
Grab someone's attention to make him stick for the next 13, 16 seconds. And that also brings along the fact that if they don't stick for the whole ad, then let's put the one thing that's important right at the beginning, or at least as soon as possible, and not wait for the end, which is the logo. If our consumers, our players are not sticking all the way to the end, so let's make sure they're aware of whose ad this is. So I think this is one of the main learnings from this report, of putting the logo right at the front. Also the CTA button, which I think is super important. It didn't come out in this specific report, but I can tell you from looking at many Allison accounts that there's a really hot recommendation to try and put that CTA button as soon as possible, or even all along the ad, just to make sure, I mean, at the end of the day, we're here for someone to click. So let's give them the opportunity to click, or at least tell them. The audience is not gonna know that they need to click unless we tell them. So let's do it right at the beginning. And then it varies. For example, when it comes to social casino, as to how many times should the reels spin? What's the top kind of character when we're showing? Should we show a real person? Should we show a cartoon person? So we are seeing that animals and cartoons work much better when it comes to social casino. But I think that at the end of the day, and this is something Maria said earlier, the beautiful thing about Allison is that it can give us like category-wide recommendations. But what's beautiful about it is that it really kind of sets the best practice for each game on its own. So 5 same slot games that probably have very similar looking videos from the side could have potentially different recommendations for the same thing. I'll have to say that the logo and the CTA is across the board, but what kind of coin animation to use, what kind of characters to put in the front, all that can change from one to the other. And I think that's really the beauty of it.
Maria or Oliver, did you also have a thought about this report and some of the data that's in it? I like this this notion that purple is a better color than like red for a purchasing button, right? And you get a 30% better ROI with purple. I don't know. Maria?
I love to generalize things. I think, again, that brings us back to the high level. That is always exciting to see. But the 3-second rule, it's a must. Not only on ads, but in the App Store. People don't look much anywhere. You have 3 to 4 seconds, so you need to make the most out of it. But then the other ones, again, look at the big picture, but also learn what works for your game specifically, because then you'll find out that there's lots of things that maybe nuances that might be different. Like perhaps the logo might not be an intro, but then maybe it might be persistent. It's starting with the intro, or perhaps, yes, the color buttons. are a whole thing, and then I just keep thinking of Game of Thrones slots, and I'm like, I'm not gonna put up a blue button there. I don't think it matches with anything that we have, right? So it's just like take some of that with a grain of salt. Don't make a Frankenstein. Use some thought process and just best practices on what to use or not use.
And Oliver, how about you?
Yeah, absolutely agreed. I thought the report was really interesting and chimes with so many of the things that we see internally and that we recommend to our clients. So that's sort of affirming on our end, just to know that someone else is sort of validating this thinking as well. I think in terms of the 3-second rule, I'm sure most of the people watching this at the moment have that as an idea already. I think for us, it's been particularly important right from the beginning of when we started selling ads. Evan, our founder, is 30 years old. We're millennials, so we sort of grew up with phones in our hand, and the idea of having an ad that you couldn't skip was almost like sacrilege. So all of our ads from the beginning have been skippable. So if you have the opportunity to skip something, you will if you're not interested, right? So from the beginning, we've always said you have to grab them from the first second. But that's the opportunity you have to really get in there. So that's the piece I really zeroed in on in the report, and it's I think less to do with a lower quality, lower sort of time of attention span, but a higher quality of attention. I sometimes use the analogy of when people first started watching cinema in silent movies, you have a train rolling into a station, then you have a black screen, and the copy on the screen says the train rolls into the station. And these days you go and watch like Ocean's 13 or something, and you have 100 cuts in 5 seconds. Like, our understanding of visual grammar is now really advanced. The amount of information you can get in a really short amount of time is massive. But you've got to make the most of it. You've got to make the most of what's on screen. You've got to make the most of how you're using audio, whether that's atmospheric or whether that's VO that's reinforcing the copy you've got on screen. Use all of the tools in your arsenal. Don't take shortcuts.
Mm-hmm. No. So we have a question kind of from a beginner here, and anybody can jump in on it. If I don't have a past creative / ads history and I'm starting a user acquisition campaign, where do I get valuable data to know which kind of creatives and ad format are the best for a specific public segment?
I can answer that. So if you have a game that you don't have data, you can use that competitor data. Always competitor data. It's important to understand what is working and what people are doing and who's spending the most. It's available in a lot of platforms. Talking to your channel partners like Facebook and Snapchat will give you some of the top performers. Will have a lot of information for you, and using the expertise of vendors, it's really important as well. Because they have done most likely a lot of similar games before, and also and not least important, probably the most important thing is understanding your game and understanding what are your selling points and what are the things that differentiate you. If you actually create some of those, you probably will have a lot of ideas that you'll be able to validate when you talk to people.
Anybody else on that?
I think the most important thing
Okay.
that Maria said is the competitive. Look at your competition, look what's happening out there, learn the category. I think that's a great starting point. Even for us, when we do creatives, the first thing we do is we try to learn what's happening out there, what are the hottest trends. You'll probably see them repeating themselves from one game to the other. And then on top of that, trying to come up with the new trends, trying to come up with the new things that can be created based on what you see out there.
And I guess for Oliver, like if you were starting out with Allison, I guess very early on, and then you've sort of moved on to a more advanced state now, like what would you say you're doing differently, or how have you learned to use the tool? I guess.
I think the use of Allison or any other sort of creative intelligence tool is going to vary massively for depending on what your setup is as a client. But I guess to speak to the previous question, yeah, we're always glad as a platform to share the latest and greatest in terms of what's working across the board, whether those are new trends that have sort of broken out and provided promising results, or whether they're top performers that are still styles that are working well and perhaps just refreshed versions of those styles. More than happy to share them. And then, yeah, I mean, Facebook's got a completely sort of searchable library where you can look up what your competitors are up to. Same with App Annie, you'll be able to find all of your sort of competitors, creators hanging out in there as well. And then in terms of the creation of variations, it's never been easier to make great creative from almost nothing with a very small team. I mean, we've got a bunch of tools within our ads manager where you can take square or landscape creative and turn it into vertical, cut it up a bunch of different ways using a bunch of sort of preloaded templates. It's really straightforward to do now, which is great. And also the ads we see performing well are not necessarily the sort of shiniest. A lot of them could just almost be like screen records. But there's sort of almost no excuse not to be trying as much as you can from a standing start. But what I would say from the beginning is figure out your test and learn agenda and really stick to it. Don't just like throw stuff at a wall. Figure out what framework you're learning against.
I guess this audience question is sort of open for anyone. So when it comes to running ads and analyzing the creative, how are you able to eliminate or lessen other factors that could be affecting the performance, like copy, the targeted audience, or any trends that may be going on at that specific time? Like one piece of creative may do really well when it ran in January, but it could show poor performance when it ran in March due to a shift in just what's popular at the moment, I guess.
I guess from an Allison standpoint, I'll have to say that when we do an analysis, we select a specific period of time, taking in everything that happened during a time. And by the way, if an ad started running in January and nowadays it's still top performing, as far as I'm concerned, it's fair game. But we want to see what's happening in the last X couple of days. We usually look at about 150 days. And then what we also do is we kind of look at creative fatigue that we have on Allison that allows us to see specific ads and how they're performing and when they're starting to show decay and how we can bring that back up. So I guess we take everything in. We look at even when we have like a recommendation, we always look to see exactly in what videos it appeared, how many times it appeared, to make sure that it's really valid. What's beautiful about Allison is that it really allows you to look at those bits and bytes and not just get the bottom line. You can understand it fully. You can see all the examples that it appeared in. You can make sure and validate each one of the recommendation based on all of the experience that you have from the same creative.
Anybody else want to say anything there?
Maybe I can talk about seasonality. Taking consideration seasonality. An ad like if you go to Facebook right now, you might see ads full of snow. Every single ad is like in holiday spirits, and that might be that might be one ad that maybe performs now, but later on is just not relevant, for example. And maybe look at the targetings themselves and the channels. That big shift can change performance on ads.
And one thing I'd add as well from the creative point of view, given the small amount of time most of our ads are dealing with, and the fact that we're saying focus on those first 3 seconds, usually we also say for each individual ad, make sure you're calling out one feature or there's one objective that you want to get out of that ad. So if you're dealing with one element and you're altering that, you can say that it is definitely that element being changed that is affecting the performance, rather than trying to do 3 or 4 things or changing 3 or 4 things and trying to compare apples to oranges. So yeah, again, it sounds basic, but similar to the sort of testing framework, just be really clear about what you're doing and have make sure you have restraint on not trying to like reinvent the wheel from A to B and then and then comparing the two. That way you can actually isolate the things that are working and the things that might not be working. So just change the copy a bunch of times, or just change the audio and leave everything else the same.
Mm-hmm. I guess we have a question that kind of relates to how much AI has been able to help Allison, I guess, as you've created it. So like how old is Allison, and is there a lot of AI technology in there that that has kind of surfaced in the last year or 2 years or something like that, some very fresh AI technology? Or
So Allison uses some AI technology, but I think that the most beautiful thing about Allison is the fact that we can drill down into very specific taggings and not keep it at a very a basic level. It's not just a male, female, cartoon, real human. We drill down to very specific names and different features and characters. So having said that, we will have to do some of this stuff by really digging in ourselves. And making sure that we tag it at least for the first time to make sure that everything is tagged the right way. So some AI, but a lot of it is really the way that we can get that information to be as detailed as possible.
Mm-hmm. And a more general question, I guess, are there key metrics that you're looking at while you're testing and researching? Anybody?
You mean within Allison or running campaigns? That's a good question.
I think running campaigns, yeah.
I think that once again, it really depends on what you're looking for. Are you looking for the CPI or the CPA, or are you looking at the ROI D7, D30? It really depends on the different games, the different titles, the different goals. It varies from one title to another. But it's really important when you test and check, if you're using Allison, to make sure that the same metrics that you're tasting the performance of your campaign is how you use Allison in that same way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'd absolutely agree with that on our end. In terms of, obviously, we're like Noah, we're dealing with a lot of different clients, a lot of different objectives and methodologies in terms of how they measure success. So I think it's more of a like back to you question in terms of, be clear in and of yourself, like what is your metric for success, and make sure you're communicating that to the partners you're working with, and make sure that everyone's on the same page. So not one of you is working towards CPI, the other's working towards some form of ROI.
It is a follow-up question to all the talk about competitor data. Like, what's the best way to get that? What's the best source for getting competitor data?
So on our end, what we do is we do a lot of work with the ad library on Facebook, where we can see all the active ads that are running. There are a couple of other ones as well, but this is one way to have a look and actually look at each game and what exactly they're running right now and how long they've been running it. You'll be able to see the basic things of how many views and that kind of and engagements have been made, but not much more. But if you look at a variety of different competitors within the same category, then you'll be able to analyze this together. What brings me to the fact that also Allison has a competitive intelligence tool within it that allows us to kind of do the same taggings that we do for our clients' creatives, to do the same on the competitive creatives. So it allows us, once again, to break down the competitives creatives into bits and pieces, and then to have them one against another and see what are we doing and our competition is doing. What are they doing that we're not doing? What are they doing that we should experiment with? So it's kind of having the same thing that we do for our own creatives on just a variety of our competitive creative, and make sure that we're not missing anything out. We're not missing out on the fun, on all the nice, happy trends that they're trying and could possibly work for them. That we should try and experiment with this as well.
And we have another broad question, I guess. How do you expect to measure UA campaign performance with IDFA being deprecated? What is the definition of a successful campaign? This is the billion-dollar question, right? I don't know. I think part of the answer is maybe coming soon. Like, what's Apple going to say to clarify the situation for everybody, right? And maybe that's coming in early 2021 when it starts to enforce, the retirement of IDFA. Anybody else have thought about like how it's going to get more difficult to measure things, and then what do you do, I guess? Yeah, I think that's an unanswerable question, isn't it? I don't know.
We'll just have to adapt when it comes. We will work with the data we have and fill the holes we can't of the data that we don't have.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's exactly the same for us. I mean, we've been doing as much as we can to prepare for this, and it's something we'll have to sort of wait and see. But I feel like we're all in a fairly good place in terms of being ready and braced for the impact. But yeah, we'll get back to you.
Yeah. And where do you start when it comes to creating something new from scratch? Do you always start with looking at the top performers and set them apart to see working elements?
I think it's this answer has a couple of sections to it. Of course, we look at Allison. We want to see top performers. We want to see trends. We want to see what's happening. But I think what's really important when you try and come up with new creative is to go back to the beginning. Think of your consumer. Think of what are their motivations to play, to buy something. What are their barriers? How can you come up with a creative that is based on an emotional motivation or something that will make your consumer move, make action, click, purchase, any kind of thing? I think at the end of the day, no matter how much data we'll bring into this, creatives need to be based on real human emotion and human needs. And we need to make sure that when someone sees an ad, it just clicks for them and it says, oh yeah, that's right. I mean, this is why I like to play. This is what makes me want to buy something. So you really have to do a little bit of digging, understanding the reasons why, and then creating creatives that show why, so that there will be an emotional connection combined with a lot of data, of course, to make sure that the elements being used are the right ones.
Anybody else on that?
How do you start? I would say have different tracks. Like never give up one for the other. Like you should always have a track where you know what your top performers are and you're trying to make similar ads. You should always try an optimization track where you're trying to optimize your top performers by changing elements, and also keep always time for an innovative track where you're always, like Noah said, going back to the drawing board and really go crazy and try to be as innovative as you can, and even rethink the way and the emotions of your users and players. See what's new in the game, see what has changed, and find those differentiators to try to bring live into just new, different, innovative ads.
I love that answer in terms of the innovation. I think that's such a big thing for us. In particular, I think again that perhaps is different to some of the other more sort of linear platforms, that more than 2/3 of people on Snapchat create content every single day. So we are a sort of camera first creative platform where people are used to mucking around, having fun. The friend networks are smaller. Usually your standard friend network is your closest 20-25 friends. So people are a lot more relaxed. They're used to dealing in this sort of humorous visual language. So the more you can be innovative and surprise them, the better. So yeah, I'd definitely recommend that. And then secondly, again, I would look for what performs well organically on the platforms that you're advertising on. So if that's within YouTube, have a look within your lifestyle categories what sort of content's working there. Within Snap, you've got a search bar where you can search and see the organic publishers and accounts that are performing the best. That's where you'll sort of learn and understand a little bit more about the language that people use and what's successful and what's the latest. But yeah, in innovation more than anything else, try and think left field. I mean, one of my favorite examples of this in sort of recent times was King with Candy Crush. They're one of our top advertisers, and they're constantly innovating and iterating on different ideas. They went from a lot of sort of recording of gameplay and sort of screen records of gameplay, and then moved into a bunch of different sort of slightly bizarre areas. One of which was having a YouTube cook make candies from scratch, like real life candies, and then had like a sped up version of that, and then just some of the Candy Crush and game element paraphernalia around. So it's about taking the elements within your game and seeing how far you can stretch them while retaining some sort of idea of what that game is and piquing people's interest and sort of bringing them in.
It sounds like all of you never really fall in love with a single ad, I guess. And I'm wondering though if you've ever had a equivalent of a Super Bowl commercial that worked so well that it was the only ad that mattered or something.
There's always favorite ads. You never get attached to one. If you like it too much, it won't work. That's just a rule for me. It's just, but also like there's a lot of things that can really change. For example, we've had an ad performing for years for Zynga Poker, and that was when we actually brought live action players into the mix. It was a changer for us. We haven't done that before, and then again, it was years ago, and it still keeps to performing up to this date. That was a big win for us.
I would think there'd be a lot of copycat ads, I guess, for something like that then, right? So.
Yeah, well, that you see that a lot. You see that because people are looking at competitors. There's always you see trends. Like somebody starts a trend, and in a few weeks, shortly after, you see lots of people trying the same ad. It makes it fun. I like it.
Yeah, and I think we're paused. We're running low on time. And does anybody have something they really wanted to communicate and get across during the webinar? Anybody anything you haven't talked about yet?
I think the one thing that I would want people to take from this is the art of experimenting when it comes to performance. And I think it was said by Maria and by Oliver. Then at the end of the day, when it comes to performance, you really have to, I like to say, send all of your children out there and see which one performs best. You'll be proud of whichever one it does, and you won't be very disappointed with those who don't. But the idea is to try from a bunch of different directions to see what can set a trend, what can be a top performer, what can catch and run for years. I think that's the fun of it too. The fact that you don't have to fall in love with just one creative. You get to experiment with a bunch. You don't have to choose just one strategy, not just one message. You don't have to, work 6 months on a campaign and then wait to see whether, like the awareness was good or not. We get to see real live results within days, and then learn and repeat. And we're just constantly doing creatives. So the idea is to just keep on experimenting, try so many different things, try live action, try animation, try just textual, just experiment with everything. And Zynga really pushes us for those experiments, and we love it. And I think that's the one thing that I would really recommend anyone who's working in creative performance to do.
Yeah, I think we've had more questions from this audience than any other webinar I've done. So anyway, I try to get to more of these here. Let's see. Is there a maximum length for creative videos for campaigns? Is there a rule about that?
I wouldn't say there's a rule. We like to stick to short 15-second videos, but I can tell you that I've seen 30-second videos perform, and even longer. I guess it's, at the end of the day, it's when all these elements come together. There isn't one right answer. we do recommend, and most platforms, even Snap, recommend the shorter the better. And if you make a long video, just make sure that all the main messages are right at the beginning. And either make something that's so extraordinary that everybody would want to watch it all the way until the end. So.
And if you make it longer, make sure it makes sense. Sorry. Because sometimes you're trying to fill in for 30 seconds. 30-second ads perform for us for some channels. But the thing is, make it as long as you need to. If you try to stick to a specific measurement of time, it makes it pushed. It makes it sometimes even lose the motion of the ad. Make it as long as you need, and then 30-second ads are harder to come up with because you have to keep the user interested in the different parts. But then just don't force it. Stop it when it just needs to stop.
Yeah, I think that matches what we'd say in general. I mean, I think also don't forget that creative length is a variation, right? Like that's something you should be understanding, and that should be part of your creative variance set is a 6-second, a 10-second, a 15-second or longer, and then try to work out, you know, as with everything, with the sort of thing we're aiming to do is find the right person with the right ad at the right moment. So that's going to vary depending on, you know, what type of consumption mode they're in, what they're really after, what content you watch that ad in between. So yeah, I'd say definitely experiment with it. There's no hard and fast rule. The only suggestions we offer are sort of to, I guess, a framework against which to try and figure out why bad performing ads might be bad performing. If you look at, you know, is it too long? That's like a first step of something that might be an alarm bell.
I think we're down to a last question here. What are some ideas for creative brainstorming sessions? What are some ideas that helped the creative juice to flow? Is it usually structured or free flowing?
I'd say that for us, we try to come to a creative session with a lot of insights, and that's what really gets us going. Insights about the game, insights about the users, playing ourselves, like playing the game while we do the brainstorm is like the #1 thing. We always play together, compete against each other. At the end of the day, you want to feel what the player is feeling in order to make ads that relate to that.
Playing the game is something super crucial. I agree that lots of data is good. I try to always bring something unexpected to the meetings that flow, maybe sometimes even controversial things. And I would say don't stick to. I usually bring like a set of creatives from the competitors, but I try to not only limit myself to mobile. Go to print, go to billboards, go to magazines. There's ideas everywhere. So you just need to you just need ideas to kind of help sometimes the creative team bring the creativity.
All right, and sorry, Oliver, I think I gotta turn it over to Dave Clark now and have to finish up. But thank you.
And thanks to you, Dean. And as a matter of fact, thanks to all of our speakers today for all of their insights: Noah Miller, Maria Waters, Oliver Wapshott, and Dean Takahashi. Thanks also to yellowHEAD for making today's event possible. We're going to wrap things up now, but before we do, just a few final notes. I want you to know that we did record today's webinar, so if you missed anything or if you'd like to view it again, you'll be able to access that recording in about 30 minutes right here on this same page. Also, just a reminder, before you leave us today, use the rating system on your screen to let us know what you thought. We'd love to see your comments, your feedback. You can rate this webinar on a 5-star scale. You can also provide us with whatever comments and feedback you'd like, so please take a moment to do that. We'd love to see that. And finally, a reminder that today's webinar is copyright 2020 by VentureBeat. The presentation materials are owned by or copyrighted by VentureBeat, which is responsible for their content, and the individual speakers today are solely responsible for their content and their opinions. Thanks so much for being with us today. That does conclude today's VentureBeat webinar. Thanks so much for spending some time with us. We'll see you next time. Have a great day.